Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's your boy, Delightful Kissboy, and today I want to talk a little bit about having an ego. You know, being a little full of yourself, etc., etc. Now, the thing that inspired this video is actually I saw an interview between Mr. Dr. K, or like I guess Healthy Happy Gamers or something like that on YouTube. Well, anyway, between him and Pirate Software, who was the recent victim of some drama. I'd say it was kind of self-inflicted in certain ways, but it's gotten way out of hand, yada, yada, yada. I saw about half of that interview, and there were a lot of interesting takeaways, and I don't want to focus on, Pirate Software, this drama or whatever, but there's kind of a general sub-tweet to Mr. Pirate Software, because I think a lot of the issues that he's having are stemming from a perceived ego that he may or may not have. Okay, I don't want to say more. All right, obviously the shit that he's dealing with sucks, and I feel bad for the guy. But I just want to talk more generally about having an ego. Okay, because it's something that I've had a lot of experience with. I think most people have like an ego on a certain level. You know, you have a self-esteem of at least a few things that you think you're good at. You know. Not everybody, but there are also people that have big egos, and I'll be the first to admit that I've got a pretty sizable ego. All right, it's actually pretty funny. When I was in college, there was somebody who came over to our house, and we were hanging out or whatever, and he was going around asking people this like personality test kind of a thing, and part of the personality test was like, I don't know, he was asking us to like visualize various weird kind of abstract things. And one of the things that we were asked to visualize was a pyramid, right? So he'd kind of give us a thing to visualize, and we're supposed to fill in the blanks as to what it looks like. And it was just kind of funny because he was like, okay, visualize a pyramid. And so I visualized this gigantic, like, shining black, like, just this huge pyramid, and it's got like a fucking diamond top. It's like a fucking Minecraft pyramid, obsidian. You know, it has a shining beam of light emanating out of the top. It's just massive, and it's floating in the air, and it's casting the shadow on the sand. It kind of was like Kirby and the Crystal Shards. You know that game? There's a big pyramid in that game, and I was thinking of that. I'm like, yes, that's my pyramid right there. And he was like, oh, that represents your ego. And I was like, okay. I mean, obviously it's a personality test. You know, it's kind of bullshit and hand wavy, but it was funny, and I had a good chuckle from that. And on a certain level, it's kind of true. All right, I've got a big ego. Sue me, you know. But I think that there's healthy ways of navigating, having high self-esteem and a big ego, etc., etc. And there are kind of unhealthy ways of doing it as well. Now, this video is not meant to be advice, necessarily, you know? I don't really want to be in the business of giving people advice. I'm more just going to share my experience, my thoughts on it, and invite you to, leave comments to let me know what you think down below. And on top, at the end of the day, I just like yapping. I love talking. It's like my favorite thing to do, and so we're going to do it. Why not? I felt like doing it. Here we go. So, let's just start with my experiences with having an ego, all right? Well, let me tell you, when I was like a kid in elementary school, I was a little know-it-all, okay? I was always raising my hand and answering all the questions and yada, yada, yada. And I don't think it's a problem for a kid to have, an inflated ego, right? I'll say that parents and other adults, they kind of feed into it because ultimately their main concern is that you are, they're excited that you're interested in academics at all, right? And I think that it should be encouraged for kids to, pursue whatever. I don't think it's a big problem if they're full of themselves. They'll learn it later, they'll learn how to be humble later. For now, you're just trying to get good study habits going, and anything that encourages them to do that is good. In addition, when you're younger, kids have, more of a tendency to be cheerleaders for each other in certain cases if you're kind of a likable person or whatever, where you're kind of like, oh, that's so cool that you did this. I don't know. It's kind of a different dynamic than when you get older and you're trying to be, standoffish and cool and stuff like that. But So, there's kids that were kind of like, hyping me up, and I got this nickname from some of those kids. It was the human calculator, which is a terrible nickname, but I didn't come up with it. But at the same time, I was loving it, baby. I was like, oh, yes, I am the human calculator. I can solve any math problem. Because I was pretty good at math. I was pretty good at school, that sort of a thing. And so I had this big head, And at that time, I wasn't experiencing any sort of pushback or anything like that would, make me change my behavior. Until I got to middle school. Now, at least for me, middle school was 7th and 8th grade. I know some schools it's like 6th through 8th grade. I don't know. But for me, it was 7th and 8th grade. And as soon as I got to 7th grade, all of a sudden, nobody gives a fuck about how good you are in school anymore, baby. Except for adults, I guess. But like, the other people around you, the only thing that people are concerned about at this point is being cool. And let me tell you, I was not cool at all, okay? I was this, big, awkward dumbass at the time who had no idea what to do, was socially clueless in a lot of ways, and I was just kind of a bumbling oaf. I could do school, and I was like, I was trying to hold on to that kind of. Basically, my whole personality up until that point had been how good at school I was. But all of a sudden, that's all fallen out from under me, and I have to develop an actual personality. But 7th grade was pretty rough for me. I was very insecure. I would kind of stick to my little friend group at lunchtime, and I was kind of shy and awkward and yada, yada, yada. I mean, I'm sure that's a lot of people's experiences. It's an awkward time, right? Then when I got to 8th grade, I started to get a little bit more confidence. But what I was trying to do is I was trying to kind of get in with one of the cooler groups of kids. So I targeted the skater kids because I knew a couple people from elementary school who ended up getting into skating. So I kind of had an in that way anyway. And also it was like they were cool, but they weren't one of the coolest groups, right? They weren't at the top of the chain. Now, I didn't skate. I was just dressing the part and hanging out with people and having a good time, I'd wear these big chunky skate shoes and shit. And, overall, it was, it's stupid. It was stupid to try to, like, conform to something, even though that's not what I do. But I made a lot of good friends that way. These people were cool at the same time. Like, that's the thing. I think people kind of get it twisted sometimes, Like, if you're not part of some of these in-groups, right? If you don't kind of conform, you kind of get the picture that they're just a bunch of, like, shallow dickheads, because you're not part of that group and they're kind of judging people based on appearance and shit like that. But, like, honestly, at the end of the day, it's just a bunch of kids trying to figure themselves out and other people out. And you have to take everybody on kind of an individual basis. There were plenty of people that were great. They were part of every single group available, pretty much, And the skaters, they were no exception. And they accepted me even though I didn't skate. But I did have to wear stupid hoodies and giant fucking clown shoes, But, it was fine. It was fine. So at this time, I was kind of getting a reality check that's like, okay, well, maybe I'm still thinking I'm Mr. Smarty Pants, but maybe I gotta, be a more multi-dimensional person. And my ego is starting to come back, because now I'm part of one of the in-groups, right? Well, I kind of got another reset when I got to high school, because I ended up going to this nerd school, all right? It was a public school, but it was one that you had to apply to, all right? And it was a STEM school, so science, technology, engineering, and math. And so, I go to this school because I was interested in science, technology, engineering, and math. At the time, I wanted to go into, I was thinking physics or mechanical engineering were kind of my two things that I was targeting when I was in high school. But it was full of a bunch of people. As soon as I got there, it was a different kind of intimidating, because all of a sudden, I am no longer the smartest motherfucker in the room. There are tons and tons of people who are just as smart, if not quite a bit smarter than me, And so now I'm not Mr. Best in class. I'm Mr. Mediocre in class compared to everybody else. You know what I mean? And so I kind of got a healthy dose of reality that's like, oh man, I am not even close to the smartest person in the fucking world. And I'm kind of experiencing that firsthand. And not only that, I'm getting a taste of my own medicine. Because now there are people that are way smarter than me who are gloating and showing off about how fucking smart they are all the time. And I'm realizing how obnoxious they can be, right? Because one thing about me is that I learn from negativity, right? I see certain negative traits in myself, and if I see somebody else doing that shit, I'm like, what the hell? Am I doing that? I gotta stop doing that. You know, I learn from seeing other people fuck up rather than kind of trying to emulate people who are doing the right things. Now, is that a healthy way of going about my life? I don't know. But that's how I do it. I'm kind of a certified hater, right? Things don't resonate with me until I see it in a negative light. All right? That's just me. But you know, I'm getting kind of a taste of my own medicine, and I'm realizing I gotta stop doing this. Holy shit. This is annoying. It's obnoxious. You know, you get the impression that these people are really insecure because they have to kind of outwardly show everybody how great they think that they are, right? And so I started kind of going into fake it till you make it humble mode, right? Because I wasn't humble, you know? I had, and still do have, a big ego, okay? But it's kind of one of those things that you got to train yourself out of. It is a fake it till you make it situation where I'm like, I got to stop talking about how smart I am, you know? And I got to start doing other things and stop gloating so much. Or else I'm going to just be an insufferable asshole that nobody likes. And so I began the process. I would try to catch myself at every opportunity and basically stop myself from gloating. And for the most part, it worked. I still have lapses. I still have lapses to today. You know, who doesn't? Who hasn't run into the issue of showing off a little too much, right? But it got a lot better in that period of time after being surrounded by people who were just like me, right? And so by the time I got to college, it was kind of like I almost had the opposite problem in a certain way. And what do I mean by that? Well, it was kind of like if I met a person, because once again, you know, I was in the computer science major at college, and a lot of these people are even smarter than the people that I knew in high school, that are just, you know, these fucking geniuses walking around. And once again, a lot of those people want you to know it, you know, and they want you to respect them for it. And so I kind of got in this habit of doing the opposite of what they wanted me to do, which was, you know, basically they kind of want to compete with me. But I was like, I fucking hate this person, and I don't want to compete with them. And so I just try to make myself look like the biggest dumbass possible, you know? Because I'd just be like, fuck you, I don't want to play your game. I'm just going to talk about how fucking stupid I am until you go away, right? And that was kind of my strategy. Now, is that a healthy strategy? Probably not. Probably the healthy strategy would just be like, okay, he's a dickhead, let me just move on with my life and not undermine my image to them just to prove a point or something, you know, because I don't know. It's not a healthy way of going about it, but it was pretty entertaining sometimes, is what I will say. My girlfriend at the time, we are no longer dating, she did not think so. Now, my ex-girlfriend was a very smart person. She is like a literal rocket scientist, yada, yada, yada. It's very impressive stuff. But she would absolutely hate it when I would do this kind of shit. And she saw it firsthand one time, which I thought was funny. We were like getting on a subway near the school. We were up near my university. And I see a guy who was in one of my like classes from a quarter or two ago. And I didn't like this guy at all because he was a big show-off. And he was very smart, but he was also a big show-off. And so we make eye contact, and it's like, oh god, now I have to go over and talk to him. Because otherwise it's just going to be awkward, because we both know that we're here, and we know each other. So I go over and I say hi, and we start talking, and like pretty much immediately he starts bragging about, you know, how crazy his course load is, and you know, how he's getting, you know, good grades on everything. And once again, he's trying to turn it into this competition, this dick-wagging contest. And I'm not having it. And so I start just talking about how stupid I am. And I'm taking all these easy gay classes and how I'm skipping all of my classes. And, man, I don't know, man. I just don't give a fuck. I'm just here in it, in it for the grade. And, there's an element of truth to this. I was skipping a lot of my classes. I wasn't the model student. But I was really trying to sell myself short to this guy so I could just be like, fuck you. I hate you. Stop fucking talking to me. And it worked. Eventually, he was just kind of weirded out by the fact that I was talking about how terrible of a student I was. And we had to, get on the subway, and he made no effort of sitting anywhere next to me, which I was happy with. And so we sit down, and my girlfriend at the time, she, elbows me, and she's like, what the hell are you doing? You're making yourself look like a total dumbass to this guy. You're smart. What the hell are you doing, And I'm like, I don't fucking care. Fuck that guy, like I don't want him to think of me highly at all. I don't give a fuck about what he thinks about me. I don't want to play his game. Fuck him, And so we kind of had a little agree to disagree moment, and I don't know. It was funny. She was very she didn't like that. She didn't like that. And later it kind of came back because I went to Red Robin. Getting some burgers with the boys one time, and I ran into another person that I knew from high school. All right, now I hadn't seen this dude in forever. And I was like, I hadn't seen him since middle school, right? Yeah, okay, that's what it was. I knew him from middle school. He went to a different high school from me, but I hadn't talked to him forever. And so we run into him, and he starts talking to me specifically, probably because we haven't hung out or talked in so long. And he's talking about, he's just flexing like crazy. That's all he's doing. He's talking about how much he's working out and how he's making these films and how great and awesome his life is and, all this stuff. And once again, I'm here with the boys. I'm trying to eat some burgers, dude. Some burgers and bottomless steak fries, buddy. And he won't shut the fuck up and leave me alone. And he's just trying to impress me so badly. And so I just say, dude, I'm homeless, man. It's like, dude, I've been a struggling addict. I'm living out of a car right now, man. Nothing's working out. At the time, I had a fucking job. Things were going well. I had an apartment. I had a job. And I'm just like, dude, everything. Oh my god, everything is so bad. And it's getting so awkward because I can tell that he just doesn't want to hear me talk about how terrible my life is. But I'm like, no, fuck you. You're going to sit here and you're going to listen to me talk about how shitty my life is. And I'm just making it up. I'm talking about how terrible things are going. And then finally he's like, yeah, I'm sorry, man. I gotta head out, but I hope things get better for you, man. And I was like, me too, man. Me too. And then I just go back to, sitting down with the boys and eating some burgers, right? I can't... I wonder how fiscally irresponsible he thought I was, that I'm living out of a car and I'm spending, $15 to $20 on a meal at Red Robin. But I thought that one was hilarious. Obviously, once again, was it the right approach? I don't care. It was funny. But I kind of had a habit of doing that. And so, but I don't know. It kind of stuck. And, once again, I still have lapses. I'll still kind of show off sometimes, and it's not the best look, but I gotta catch myself. And that's kind of what I want to talk about, though. It's kind of the distinction, in my opinion, between having an ego, being full of yourself, gloating all the time, yada, 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 and having confidence. Because I think both of those things stem from the same place, right? Thinking highly of yourself, okay? But they're kind of exhibited in different ways, all right? Basically, in my opinion, the difference between the two is that with confidence, you're kind of aiming it inward, right? You're having self-esteem, you're having confidence in your own abilities that allows you to live a life that you enjoy living, and having the confidence that you're going to be able to pull things off, right? And so you just need to tell yourself about that, basically, right? You're not focused on what other people think. You're not focused on impressing other people. You're just focused on, like, it's like, okay, well, I want to do this thing. Oh man, is it going to work out? And then you tell yourself, it is going to work out because I'm good at this and I can do this, right? That is rooted in having, you know, an ego, but it's a healthy manifestation of your ego, in my opinion. It's enabling you to do things that are worth doing, right? Whereas if you are braggadocious or don't have an ego, I mean, a lot of that is rooted in insecurity, by the way. You know, you may think highly of yourself, but really the desire to have everybody else subscribe to the image that you want them to of yourself and be respected and yada, 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 that is rooted in insecurity. But it's kind of like taking your ego and shooting it outwards and being like, okay, it's not only enough for me to have confidence in my own abilities, I need you to have confidence in my abilities as well. Have this external validation set up so that you can feel good about yourself, right? And that's not healthy, in my opinion. That's not a healthy thing. And once again, I think we all struggle with it to some extent, but it's going to be better if you're not trying to do that shit, right? If you're just trying to be able to find the validation that you need to do the things you want to do from your own self, you know, and people are gonna like you a lot more, and I think that people will respect you a lot more as well. It's kind of like a sad thing, an ironic thing, kind of paradoxical, that when you so desperately want something, like you know, like if you want respect from other people, right, so desperately, and if you want people to think that you're cool really desperately as well, you're kind of paradoxically you're undermining yourself. Like, outwardly showing that you care so much about these things makes people kind of do the opposite of what you want them to do, you know? And I think, like, people, I think, can cognitively understand that, but it's like there's certain defense mechanisms that kind of come up certain times that prevent them from realizing that in the moment, and they resort to things like gloating and shit like that. At least, you know, that's kind of my experience, and I've seen that in other people as well. And so it's kind of like a thing that I had to just kind of train myself out of, for the most part. A very conscious effort, and it kind of came from exposure therapy by being surrounded by a bunch of me's, essentially, right? And being like, okay, well, I don't like this way that I act when other people do it, so I should stop doing it, you know? But once again, I think the key difference, in my opinion, between being full of yourself and having a healthy amount of confidence and self-esteem is just where you're directing that ego, baby. And you want to direct it inwards, you know? Be happy and enthusiastic and full of yourself to yourself, you know? Be proud of yourself. Don't go to other people for external validation, you know? Except for, you know, a few of those people in your life that are there for that sort of thing, you know. Talking about, like, significant others, you obviously, you're both rooting for each other, right? So I don't really think that there's much gloating it's not as much gloating when you're talking about your accomplishments to your SO as much as you're kind of like, you're just supposed to do that, right? There's certain people where you've known them long enough, you're close enough, they're gonna be happy for you. But the average person who you're kind of like, you know, are just kind of people you know, like co-workers and friends that you don't hang out with all that often, they're not gonna fucking like it when you just talk about how awesome you are all the time. The people that are going to tolerate it or even enjoy it are going to be the people who already they've known you long enough to know that, you know, they care about you, right? There's a difference there. And I think it's good to learn the appropriate time to indulge in your gloating, all right? And it's with the right group of people, which is a very small group of people, in my opinion. That's just my opinion, you know. I'm rambling, I'm yapping. You know, let me know what you think down in the comments. Am I spot on? Am I completely off base? Do you relate to what I'm talking about in any shape or form? I don't know, just let me know. Hit me up. And also, you know, just let me know. I'd like to be like, oh, DKB, you talk about how, you know, you're not gloating all the time, but in your videos you are, brother. I mean, I take feedback, and I don't know. I try not to. I try not to like. Okay, that's the thing. I just want to say, you know, I want to give myself a little credit here. I want to give myself a little credit. I think I'm pretty good with taking feedback, and I've made several mistakes in my videos. I talk about how I have a big ego. I fuck up constantly, okay? And I'm fully aware that I'm a fallible person who gets things wrong. And I've had several videos where I've made mistakes, right? A lot of times there's typos or whatever, but, you know, occasionally I'll just get something wrong, and I've got to kind of own up to it and be like, yeah, I got this fucking wrong. And that's kind of one of the things I just wanted to say as well, is that, like, people, in my experience, like, if you're a person that struggles with admitting when you're wrong, I'm going to tell you right now, people start to like you a lot more when you can admit that you're wrong. Okay? Across the board. I mean, at least what the right people are going to. Okay? That has been my experience overall. If you can kind of humble yourself and realize, yeah, I fuck up, and it's okay that I fuck up, and it's okay to admit to other people that I fuck up, people are gonna, I don't know, people, in my experience, they, you know, grow to respect you even more as a person, right? Because we're all a bunch of dumbasses. We're always messing up. You know, it's unreasonable to expect that you wouldn't do so, right? And so, I don't know, if you struggle with admitting when you're wrong, I would encourage you to really, really try to, like, lean into when you fuck up, just, like, embrace it, you know, and be like, yeah, I did fuck up, I am sorry, you know, I was wrong, and realize how liberating it feels, and then notice how people respond to you, right? They, you know, a lot of times they may be mad at you in the short term, but it makes things so much better in the long term, dude. Honestly, like, it's to the point where with certain fuck-ups, it has a net positive impact on your relationship with other people. Because it shows that you're mature enough to be like, yeah, I can admit when I'm wrong, you know? And people will be like, okay, yeah, you know, I was mad at this person in the short term, but I realized that it's you know, it's a good quality that they can apologize and admit what they're wrong. I mean, I'm not talking just about, like, getting something factually wrong or, like, messing up a math problem. I'm talking about if you did a shitty thing, admitting it and kind of, like, apologizing to a person rather than having such an ego that you can't allow yourself to do so, you know? People are just, you're just going to become a much more likable person, like, immediately. As soon as you learn to do that. And like I said earlier, faking it till you make it, it does work in certain cases. Not all the time, but I think in this case, it really can work. So I would encourage you to try it out. You know, once again, I said I wasn't going to do advice, but that one I think is a game changer. All right? Realizing that your ego is not so important that you can't admit when you're wrong and when you fucked up. It's going to liberate you. It's going to set you free, buddy. Things are going to become a lot easier. A lot easier. Okay? So give it a whirl if you struggle with that. I mean, I'm probably preaching to the choir here. You're probably all a bunch of confident, you know, people who are self-assured, and I don't need to say anything to you. But for the few of you out there who have struggled with this sort of thing in the past, like me, give it a whirl. From my experience, it's good. It's very good. Okay? All right, I think I've rambled enough, but hope you got something out of this video. I hope you at least found it kind of interesting. Let me know what you think. All right. Bye-bye.